Welcome, folks, to the 19th of June, 2024 Aries Working Group call. This is a Hyperledger call, and so the antitrust policy and the code of conduct are in effect. We have a link to the agenda that I will place in the Zoom chat. You're welcome to make any adjustments that are useful to the community um, to the agenda. It just requires a Linux Foundation login, and you can go ahead and do that. They don't have live edit enabled, so those changes will be merged after, but please do make them. You're welcome to add yourself to the attendees list in particular, and that can help folks who may be listening to the call or would like to get in touch with you about something. They can figure out how to get in contact with you. My name is Sam, and I will be your tour guide today, or your meeting host, or whatever else applies. And we have a request. Eli is a new attendee and has just requested that we do a round robin of introductions, and recognizing that this is a little bit of a smaller crowd than normal, that sounds like a good idea. And so I let's do that. You're also yes. Anyway, so let's do that. So please, let's introduce ourselves um, around the table. If you're able, you don't have to, but we'll do that. I'll start. My name is Sam. I work for Indicio. I've been involved in Aries and in the DIDCOM work that's now at the diff for a long time, and I'm glad you're here. Eli, why don't you go next, and then we'll pass it around the table.
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Eli Wolfson, originally from New York, and I'm working on a project called Reclaim Protocol, which is a decentralized identity initiative.
Cool. Akif?
Yeah, my name's Akif. I work with the BC government along with some other people on uh, this group. Yeah, and I usually work with the Occupy framework. Yeah.
Uh,
Awesome. Thanks, Akif. Jorge?
Hey, I'm Jorge, co-founder of CTO. We're a social impact startup, and we've been implementing on top of Aries for some time. We haven't really contributed much, but we're big fans, and we did recently publish a pull request for our very first DIDCOM protocol called the DIDCOM survey, which I encourage everyone to go and review. Thank you.
Thanks, Jorge. Love the hat. Subasis?
Hi, this is Subhashish. I'm in Northern Block. We are a company based out of Canada, also working in digital identity, and have been part of the Aries group for a few years. And welcome to the group, Eli.
Thank you.
You, Subhashis. Tim?
Yeah, hi, it's Tim Bloomfield. Sorry, it's really loud where I am, but I work for the Ontario government on digital trust and various other things with respect to wallets and I don't know, credentials. Anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Victor?
Yeah, I'm independent. I've been joining the DITCOM actually meeting a lot more, but I just trying to figure out what's the difference between the relationship between DITCOM and Hyperledger Aries, and overall where Hyperledger and blockchain is. So like, for example, is blockchain using every Hyperledger project?
Yes, and I'd be happy to answer that. And so did I miss anybody? I think we got everyone on our round robin today. I do want to acknowledge, Eli. You're down in Colombia. We have a wonderful group of Canadians that contribute and are present a lot, all the way across Canada. So that's pretty cool. To get to the DIDCOM versus Aries thing, so there's a historical relationship there and sort of a current practical one. So DIDCOM V1 was created here in the Aries working group due to sort of external interest. The DIDCOM V2 was created over at the diff, and we are in the process of adopting DIDCOM V2 here now. The Hyperledger name association with Aries is a little odd in the sense that that Aries can work with ledgers. It has a historical relationship with Indy, but also support for other ledgers and other DID methods and things like that. And so it's a little bit of a loose relationship at this point. Aries isn't really a ledger specific thing, although it can use them, and that'll be even more true in the future with the addition of sort of more supported things. So hopefully that brief description gave a little bit of clarity there, and if not, we can dive into that deeper if that would be useful.
Yeah, so basically the Hyperledger Aries is DITCOM. You can pretty much say that. Is that
It
right?
uses DIDCOM, but there are projects outside of Aries that use DIDCOM as well.
Okay.
So Credo over in the Open Wall Foundation came from an Aries code base and has moved to the Open Wall Foundation. Under the desires of the maintainers. There's also I'm gonna blank on the name of it. There's a code project that started in Ethereum circles and ended up over at the diff, and I'm not remember the name of it. I'll remember it in a second.
Enterprise Agent?
No, there's that one too, although that's still a Hyperledger lab, I think,
Oh,
unless it's moved.
what's the
You know what I'm talking about?
Atlius?
No. Oh gosh, I'll find it. Anyway, there's other code projects that implement that. There's oh no, I don't know about that one. Although cool. Anyway, there's like the Spherian libraries support DIDCOM, or have some DIDCOM support. I'm not sure in the libraries, but certainly in the product level. And so so there's definitely stuff that's like it has spread beyond Aries, but it has some historical roots here.
Yeah, it would be great if there's already a white paper or any blog regarding that. Would be nice. Otherwise, writing one. I think there's a growing interest outside of I think both the diff and Hyperledger community to use distributed identities and etc. But I think there's a lot of confusion about this area.
Yes. One of the other areas of confusion is that there's lots of protocols in the area, VC APIs or the OpenID for VC protocols that work with the transfer. Verimo, thank you, Tim. The name of the project is Verimo. Tim got it for me. That's at the diff. Anyway, there's lots of protocols that are very specific to verifiable credentials, and DIDCOM has protocols that do verifiable credentials on within the DIDCOM sort of meta protocol framework. But it also does other stuff that's really useful, that benefits being alongside verifiable credentials, but are in fact not verifiable credentials themselves. And so sometimes folks are like, well, how is this verifiable credential oriented? Which it actually kind of isn't, despite the fact that it supports them well. So I think there probably is some need for some. I think there's been over the past handful of months in particular, there's been a lot of new people entering the field, and so there's a lot of sort of basic sort of understanding, marketing or explanations maybe that can be really useful. So totally. So thank you for asking questions. You're not the only one, I'm sure.
I don't want to take too much of your time. Just a last quick one. There's also like a blockchain. My impression is every Hyperledger project need a blockchain. I don't know if that's right or not.
That actually isn't true. Hyperledger is struggling with that because they have a lot of stuff that is definitely blockchain oriented and stuff that isn't. Another one that is kind of related to blockchain in the same way that that Aries is, in the sense that it's peripheral but not required, is the AnonCreds project, also at Hyperledger. And so anyway, that's a known thing, and I do believe that solutions are underway at Hyperledger for sort of that branding conflict issue. So
thank you.
Oh, new link for a DIDCOM v2 implementation, Jorge. That's awesome. That's one I didn't know about. Cool. Yes. Okay, so continuing on with our meeting. Does anyone, I'm thinking possibly not, but does anyone have any release status or work updates that they want to share for projects related to our work here? Awesome. So I cheated a little bit and have a very sort of copied but also loose agenda here. And so we can definitely have some open topic discussion time. We've had a little bit of that already, which is awesome. And then one of the questions that I sort of have, generally speaking, is priorities that folks have for the second half of 2024, and how Aries as a community project can be involved and or support those efforts. And so seems like a decent time for a check-in. And so and we can definitely hear from anyone who wants to share or willing to share to help that to sort of help awareness of that. So that's kind of what I had on the agenda. That we've talked about a lot of these topics. We have a lot of open things at the moment that kind of aren't moving, mostly because conference season is upon us, and so it's hard to make some of those check-ins that are necessary to move these things forward. But very open to any topics today that folks would like to discuss. We have, and it can be at any level. And, it can be more simple, it can be more complicated, it could be anything that you would like it to be today. And I think that that's the most useful thing that we can do with our time. And if no one has any thoughts or questions, then it's okay to end the meeting early as well. So with that, open floor. What would folks like to talk about? And if it's useful to talk about general priorities for the second half of 2024, I'd love to sort of jot some of those things down and have them all in our brains for how we might be able to help with that. So who's got some thoughts, folks? No thoughts? None at all?
Can you repeat the question, Sam?
What's that?
Can you
Oh,
repeat the question?
sure. Who has thoughts or topics that they would like to discuss around Aries? Open topics. Anything you'd like to discuss today?
Sam, would you have an update from the marketing efforts that have been ongoing? I'm curious if there's clarity on, it sounds like there's a lot of really awesome projects out there building on top of Aries, but it seems like it's not as known
It's
what projects are out there.
It's not as known. I mean, that's one of the good things but also challenging things about open source projects is that, there's no requirement that people tell you what they're doing. And so often we discover things in the wild. We're like, awesome, you use Aries, but there's not as much known. One thing that I would like to mention, and this is not exactly what you're asking, but is that if you are working on something, we would love to like highlight it, show it, talk about it, whatever is useful there. Um, to sort of bring attention to the project and even discuss like what you're doing, and anything that the community can learn from would be fantastic. And sometimes folks don't want to show early phase projects, and I totally get that. But at a point where you're open and willing to have that, then that would be something we would love to involve. That'd be pretty great. But yeah, so the marketing efforts are happening to try and help understand. Part of it has been trying to understand potential moves by Hyperledger on their own larger level marketing, and what actually may happen as a result of those things. And so there's been some of that stuff in the works for a little bit, and I suspect it won't be too much longer before we start to hear about that, and there'll be some sort of some messaging along with that. But as far as like new projects using stuff, there's those things are hard because we more or less have to wait until people volunteer that information, before they get there. So yeah, sorry, it's kind of a weak sauce update, Jorge.
Oh, good.
But yeah. Is anyone willing to share kind of what their priorities are for the second half of the year?
I I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of like the Akapai maintainers, but what I can say is we're interested and keen on interop. So there seems to have been obviously a lot of work on the different implementations, but one of the main things that we're looking at is ensuring that we maintain the interoperability between different agent implementations and that we're keeping up on top of that. So over the last few weeks, in the maintainers and the user group discussions, we've been talking about how we can better do that and better keep up with tests so that we can catch differences in uh, the different implementations. So I think that's probably something that we're looking at prioritizing for at least the second half from my perspective, but there's plenty of other people who might have their own things that they want to prioritize.
Thank you, Keith. That's awesome. Other priorities for second half? I have one I'll offer, which is demonstrate protocol. Interop is the wrong word because they're different protocols. Um, but what's the right technical term for getting alongness? Cooperation, maybe? And so,
I heard there's a open source community in the ag space, and they use the term collabathon. Just that to like
yeah, so we've used the term interopathon before, kind of is the same idea. The collabathon, I think, is awesome as well. Um, what I'd love to see here is I would love to see implementations of the OpenID DIDCOM work demonstrated, basically how you get DIDCOM and OpenID to work alongside each other. That work looks really good and there's already code examples, so we know it works, but actually like showing that in practice would be really cool, um, to help people kind of understand the value of having both and how that comes along. I think would be cool. So last week, and it's down here in the notes, we've talked about an interopathon, and that gets a little bit, Keith, to your discussions there as well. And so I think that would be awesome. I think that in particular, demonstrating the move to DIDCOM v2 and having sort of being in a post unqualified DID world would be really valuable there, and we're making really good progress on both of those things. Um, and so having that as a target, I think, would be really good this summer, to be able to get together and sort of demonstrate, the, the, the continued operation before all that stuff. Um, so yeah, OpenID for VC protocols specifically. I say OpenID. Interestingly enough, the techniques we use aren't specific to the OpenID for VC protocols. They would actually work alongside OpenID regular too. I just haven't had someone describe like why they would want that. There seems to be the note there. So, um, are you not able to edit the attendees on the wiki meeting notes? Is that not happening? Oh, it won't show up live, Jorge. So if you've added something, then it will be added later after
oh, that's really
everybody's
weird.
together.
It seems like I'm now logged in through like a Linux Foundation SSO, so
Well,
I
that's
don't
weird.
see an edit. I don't see an edit button.
Huh. I don't know what's going on there. I'd be happy to
Uh,
add you if you'd like, though.
Please.
Um, oh, God, I have to type right though. Are you on this list? There you go. There you go. Entidad is still the thing
Yeah,
in your email address?
yeah, jorge@entidad.io. Thank you.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm big into trying to pick a target that we can do here and then sort of demonstrate the the interop there. I think would be pretty awesome. I'm happy also to include like demonstrations of OpenID protocols, right? I think that would be awesome as well. We also have, and this may be a target. I think it's worth looking at the different credential types that are active in the Aries ecosystem, and also, demonstrating what we can of that. So additions of SD-JOTs or LD credentials or DI credentials, the data integrity credentials, or things like that, I think would also be really useful to demonstrate as part of that.
I have a quick question about connections, and this may not be the right group for that, but there seems to be a lot of interest in being able to connect through different mechanisms. So I know like BLE and all that stuff has already been proposed, but I'm curious about whether there's some sort of formal, I guess, documentation around this, and like whether people have been able to successfully implement connecting through different mechanisms other than like QR codes or invitation URLs and things like that.
So do you mean connections as in transports, or do you mean like initializing connections? Like what's the
I would say initializing connections. So one of the things, I guess, especially for mobile interactions, is the ability to use things like NFC or other types of mechanisms, device mechanisms to initiate protocols as opposed to having to scan. Uh, so I guess, yeah, maybe I'd be interested in sort of where we're at there.
um so I could share a little bit, and then I'd love everything that anyone else has to know. BLE's been defined, but I don't know that it's been super demonstrated. I would love this so much. It's hard for me to describe how much I would love to see this. There was research done by, oh, they've actually got a BLE inside of Credo. That's awesome. I would love to see that demonstrated. I don't know that I've seen that yet. Maybe it's just new enough. But Daniel Hardman was involved in a project that looked really deeply into using NFC as a transport. And what they discovered was that you indeed can, but it's complicated because the antennas that exist on most mobile phones are actually relatively targeted. And so while you can hold up one phone to like another phone to like make it work, um, the connection ends up being spotty and then relatively slow. And so that was really problematic. It was his rough conclusion that NFC it can be really ideal for initializing a connection, but then something like BLE, it makes a lot more sense because the actual like, millimeter precision or at least centimeter precision of the phones you holding the phone up isn't as important. And so NFC does have the ability to already act using existing standards, like to load a link. And so I think the idea there was that you would just take the same URI that you stick in a QR code and stick it into the NFC, um, uh, into the NFC tag, and then that introduction could then be used to either establish some other kind of connection. I've always imagined that it could be used to bootstrap a BLE connection in the sense that the NFC could indicate which BLE address, like the MAC address, for example, of the other BLE connection is associated with the sticker, and that way you can then connect to them. You'd like using BLE. That could be useful in a scenario where you have like a row of these things. I'm thinking like a grocery checkout where you need to make sure that you're opening a BLE connection to the checkout machine in front of you instead of like one aisle over. And so the NFC could be useful for that as a mechanism. Beyond that, I'm stoked about so Animo did the initial design of the BLE transport. And here's a package. Does anyone know if that's been like demonstrated in a product yet?
Don't know,
I know.
but just to add to what you were saying, Sam, that the ISO MDL standard is similar, where NFC is to establish the connection, and then you go to BLE for the data transport.
Yeah, that sounds like a comparable strategy.
Yeah, even there in BLE, you will, because Aries is heavy, you have to do chunking of data. You got to send it over many times to get the payload over.
Yeah, and there's a BLE WebSocket kind of functionality where it's a data stream, but you definitely there's stuff to do there. Tim, you're mentioning it's a little underspecified compared to and I believe that the 1801 is the ISO MDL, right?
Yeah.
Any other commentary you can share there, Tim?
Sorry, I'm in a very noisy environment. I don't know if you can hear me.
We totally can, and we don't actually hear much
Yeah,
noise in the background.
it's just, if you look at the ISO spec, I mean, there's a lot of details. Just getting the blade transport working is one thing, but to interoperate, everyone's got to agree on exactly how it works from UIDs on down. And if you know, yeah, so it's just, it lacks a specification. It's not a long one, but it needs to be written and agreed to.
Totally agree. Have you seen the BLE transport work done by Animo?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Because it
And
includes
I've
a
seen
lot
also,
of those details. I'm sure there's maybe stuff I don't understand, but it includes a lot of those details. For example, like the service IDs and other things that would need to be used, across the
yeah,
community to work.
it absolutely does. It's just that someone's got to put that in there as RFC.
Yeah, I think where is that defined? That ended up. That's a good question. Um,
Hey, hey guys.
yeah.
I would like to announce, I guess some good news for Entidad. We were just awarded a grant by the philanthropic community called the Civic Trust for Life, and our proposal for this grant was actually a close proximity credential exchange built on top of BLE. So we might be able to, we might be able to, help further develop this protocol uh, in hopes that we can get others to try to use it.
That would be amazing. So I just pasted a link. This I believe is where the DIDCOM spec work that. Oh no, this doesn't. Oh, here you go. Yeah. So let me pull this over into the other tab that I'm sharing here. So this is the work that was done by Animo, and then it's been transferred over into the diff as a repo as the transport over Bluetooth. And so it has some stuff in here. Notably, it has like the DIDCOM service UUID, and then there's a characteristic. These are terms that are specific to Bluetooth. There's a read and a write characteristic on how to send data. And so these things can be defined, and as long as everyone uses the same ones, it works. And so that's the idea here, is that you could detect, for example, when you do service discovery on a Bluetooth endpoint, you can detect the UUID for DIDCOM, and if they have that, then like they're speaking this DIDCOM as over BLE the same way that you are, and then the read and the write characteristic do the same thing. They enable that sort of socket information buffer to transfer. There's also there's discussions of chunking because of the maximum transmission unit size, and so they describe how to make that happen. And then the pairing is also an issue in BLE, and so it kind of discusses how to actually make that happen as well. And so so yes. And then other message formats and encodings, they have like JSON and protobuf and gzip JSON and other things like that that they have also dropped in here as a method there. So they have a remaining section. And so there's a a discussion of how to do that and other things that relate that they have discussed here. I would love to see this demonstrated. One of the things that that has occurred to me is that we have in the DIDCOM community over at the diff has created their browser demo demo.didcom.org, and it would be really cool to implement BLE as a transport on that. It may require setting browser flags in order to allow the browser APIs to access BLE stuff, but the ability to just do that from a browser might actually be insanely powerful to do. We would just need the software on the mobile side, which maybe we could check to see if the similar or the same browser style approach might work. But certainly having that in an app and demonstrating how that works is really cool. One of the reasons why I would love to see this implemented is that I'm sure there's stuff that we need to learn. And so having an implementation that someone's willing to charge ahead on, and it looks like there's at least part of a transport here in Credo that in order to sort of sort out those issues, like run into the problems in the way, and then we get to figure out how to fix them, I think would be really powerful.
I was just taking a look at the web Bluetooth API, and it looks like so far Chrome and Edge are the only browsers that support it. So there is limited support for it on the web, unfortunately, but it'd be good to at least try it out.
Well, my thought was not that we try to do something in production with it, but we just use it as a demonstrator to prove out the concepts, but in a
Yeah.
more rapid way than mobile app development. That was what I was thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Brave also supports it. Firefox and Safari don't support it.
There, have you guys tried passkeys? Passkeys can use Bluetooth Low Energy for proximity on a web browser, and that's mostly works. It's a little fiddly, but it's there in production.
Yes. Yeah. So Tim, you mentioned enterprise scalable mediation, more implementation than protocol, but I think there's some protocol work required. Indicio's done a lot of that. That isn't currently open source, but we've scaled mediation quite high there. I would love that to be open source in the future. It isn't really yet.
I think it's significant to me. It's one of the biggest blockers to DIDCOM being deployed in large-scale projects. Is that there really is no available, really scalable mediation right now. I mean, there's lots of ideas, lots of work going on. I know there's lots of work going on in Credo and other places, but it's something that gives people who want to deploy like 10 million credentials significant pause.
Yeah, we've done that and demonstrated it at scale. Our approach was to implement it using sort of native cloud features offered by AWS and others in order to accomplish it. And that helps solve some of the issues because it makes it harder to run like locally or on your own hardware, but it definitely got us to the point where it would reach, tens of thousands of highly active connections simultaneously. Of course, not active connections are easier, of course, to have. And so we were curious about the large scale of making that happen. Part of that project ended up in SocketDock. We needed the ability to scalably terminate WebSocket instances with the ability to send data back down that back down the WebSocket. And so there's a repo here that I'll drop that has part of that solution, and that's been open sourced. And the goal there is to be able to act terminate like a DIDCOM WebSocket connection, which is often necessary for mediation, and then pass the messages back to something else using just HTTP posts. And so those could be passed to individual instances or whatever else. And then there is a callback URI basically that allows whatever's on the back end to call back to a specific SocketDock instance in order to send something back down the WebSocket. And so this allowed us to have a very high number of active WebSocket connections that were bidirectional as part of that process. So that has been open sourced, and that was created as part of our process of creating a very highly scalable mediator. So that's open for use. It's pretty inspecific as to what happens. It has some requirements for what happens on the other side, but they're relatively easy to accommodate. So if you have that specific problem of trying to terminate a very large number of WebSocket connections, then SocketDock may provide an answer or some help in that area. That's not a complete answer, Tim, to what you're bringing up, but I've added that to the notes here for the.
Maybe perhaps what's needed is just publishing results, proof points. And hey, I mean, everything doesn't have to be handed on a platter, right? You build and develop code, but here's a proof point that based on this infrastructure and this cost, we could handle 10,000 simultaneous active, on WebSocket connections, something like that would be really interesting.
Let's see. I'm trying to see what we've actually published.
And maybe you have. I just haven't seen it, so I'd likely to.
Well, we have a marketing thing that says lots. Oh, so it actually does contain numbers here, and I can send you this link. We've tested it up with up to 50,000 simultaneous connections, and so that's where we kind of quit because we were not detecting any scale issues at that point. And 50,000 simultaneous connections doesn't mean total number of mediated agents. It means actively open. And so yes, that's definitely part of it. So there's that, and that's a number that we've published. But yeah, we've got there.
Well, that's very useful. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we actually quit at 50,000 because we had to generate enough. We had to spin up a very large cluster of software to actually make and maintain. And those were pinging messages as well, not just maintaining a WebSocket. So they were actively sending messages back and forth. The reason we quit and where we did is because it was going to be really painful to scale the load generating cluster larger than we did, and we didn't see any limits, or we did not see any impending slowdowns at that scale. And so at that point we just gave up and said that's fine.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, and cost is also really important. I mean, if it scales, but it's very expensive, that's another issue to think about.
Right.
Especially with cloud, right? The bills get big in a hurry.
It can, but we were concerned with the lack of known mediation services that could accomplish this, and we needed that to exist, and so we made it. And so
absolutely,
there's certainly stuff that we can get better at in the future, including cost, but we needed to make sure it existed. Cool. So I'm seeing the OpenID BLE. OpenID is definitely working on a Bluetooth transfer for presentation. It will similarly be limited by the fact that it's only VC focused, which is either a blessing or not, depending on your perspective. But it might be useful to look at what they're doing there to make sure that we have the similar level of definition.
And when you say VC, you mean W3C VC?
No, I just mean verifiable credentials.
It should be anything.
Yeah,
it should cover anything.
OpenID is really inspecific to what they do, but my point is that it's not like DIDCOM where you can transfer arbitrary messages or defined protocols. It has to be a verifiable credential that you're passing of some
I
form.
see.
It's really
okay, got it.
It's really unpicky about what credential format you're using. But it is focused very much on verifiable credentials only.
I did see in the comments someone was talking about. Sorry.
No, please go.
Sorry, Sam, I cut you off. I couldn't hear. I was
You
going
go,
to say
Tim.
really quickly that the source code is available for the Open Foundation project. It's just not in, I don't think it's an OWF repo yet. And unfortunately, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the parent project that is underneath. There is a very large credential project that's used in a lot of countries. I think used in India and other places, and the code is there. The libraries are there.
Mossip, is that the one you're talking about?
Yes, that's the one. It's under Mossip. You will find the OpenID for Blay libraries there. So, yeah.
Okay, so I want to get to
Have been
Victor's.
transferred.
Yeah, Victor, you had a comment. It would be great to understand the use cases on one hand for security purpose. There's need to be simplified. On the other hand, edge computing, federated, decentralized, distributed AI, ML, learning, inference also needed distributed solutions. So
Yeah, I've been participating in a lot of the CNCF side as well. And so right now the difficulty is there are so many different authorization engines. So there is already effort to kind of make it interoperable and centralized, because only this way you can have a kind of an end-to-end supply chain security picture. So on the one hand, that's so in a way, having distributed make it harder actually. But on the other hand, there's also need to do edge related AI, machine learning, etc. on the edge, like federated distributed learning. So it's kind of like two directions. How to So I think there could be a lot of collaboration between the diff community and OpenID community to make that happen, to meet the need for both ends of the picture.
So part of it is this is the centralized, decentralized debate. And one of the fun parts here is that sometimes you get into a discussion and suddenly you realize that the other person means different things by decentralized than you do. There needs to be some more open communication about exactly what you mean by that word, but not you specifically. I mean all of us. One of the things that I will mention is that there. The term typically used in decentralized identity to talk about this is governance, and that's a little bit of a broad term. There are several specific projects that relate on how to determine authority within ecosystems. One is the credential trust establishment work at the diff. Generically, the term is called like a trusted issuer list, although that's a little bit simplistic of a term to describe what's going on, but it describes the issuers and verifiers and optionally verifiers within an ecosystem, and then which credentials and who's authorized for what. And so that work exists and is a way to allow an authority within any ecosystem to publish that data. It's centralized in the way that there is an authority expressing their opinion. It's decentralized in a way that any authority can express their opinion, and that specific spec has been designed to be very low cost, which means that it can be served by small ecosystems as well as large ones. There's an API-centric approach that has been generated by the Trust Over IP Foundation that is similar in the sense that you can also use that hosted API to determine whether an issuer or a verifier is valid for a specific purpose. And so those, but again, anyone could host that API. So it's decentralized in the sense that anyone can run any ecosystem they want without sort of a central authority granting them access to. But it still sort of respects the respects the decentralized nature of how ecosystems grow. And so that gets a little bit to that work. Anyway, I just wanted to share some of those terms so that it would be a little bit more open there.
Yeah, I think there was already a lot of publications, but it's great to have more, even more clear and good for like beginners articles regarding what you're talking about.
Totally, and I know that the diff is working on some stuff that will help add clarity to how those systems work and why you should use them. So there's stuff happening there. Cool. Yeah, Mossip for the OpenID for BLE at the OWF. So So definitely there. I'm still very interested in using DIDCOM for that, just for the same reasons that I'm interested in using DIDCOM generally, in the sense that being able to move more than just VCs over BLE is very interesting to me. I think there's a lot of interesting good user experience use cases that would benefit from BLE. One of the cool things that I would like to see demonstrated is that you can detect that the other party speaks DIDCOM using the BLE service characteristics and stuff. It would be cool to show how a device can detect someone nearby that speaks DIDCOM over BLE, makes an initial connection, but marks it as untrusted for messages coming across, asks for and receives verifiable credentials that provide evidence of the controlling party on the other side, and then also uses the DIDCOM service, feature discovery to discover the types of ways that you might be able to integrate with the other party. And what that would allow you to do is solve, without a loss of security, you can solve a huge user discovery interoperability perspective where they don't have to even try to use the thing unless they know it's going to work. And so it's possible, for example, that if I'm in a restaurant, I detect a nearby BLE endpoint. I can connect to it. My phone automatically connects to it. Receives proof that it is in fact the restaurant that I'm sitting in, and then uses DIDCOM's feature discovery to find a common payment, protocol that is used by both the restaurant and me. And then the app can pop up and prompt me and say, would you like to pay your bill at this restaurant using this method? And it's already done all of the necessary steps to verify the other party, et cetera. And then I can simply hit yes or go or provide that, and then the app can already complete that type of interaction. And that is substantially better than prompting the user at a restaurant to go open this app and hit this thing and try this thing and then do the payment. So the ability to have my phone automatically figure that out for me and verify all of the necessary trust steps in the way, I think would just be really powerful. And so that's something that I would love to see demonstrated. And we already have a lot of that stuff. We just need to sort of put the pieces together to make that work. So anyway, sorry about my soapboxy desire for the future there, but cool. We have 2 minutes left in our hour. Or 1 minute. We've had a lot of awesome discussion. Any parting thoughts, questions, words that folks want to share before we're done today?
Just want to say thanks for all the awesome information. I can't wait to go and read this stuff. So
yeah, this is a super effective meeting. I learned a while ago that if you get the agenda too packed, then stuff like this doesn't bubble up. And so it's really nice occasionally to have like an unpacked agenda so that these things can surface in a really helpful way. So thank you to everyone for bringing stuff up and sharing links and all of that stuff.
What is the best meeting to follow area? Because I'm most interested in on the security aspect of distributed learning, AI/ML distributed learning and edge. Which group, whether it's a DICOM or here, have the most discussion regarding that?
DIDCOM is very focused on just the transport of things, and also possibly the development of protocols on top of it, generically speaking. Aries is mostly focused on the use of that and other protocols for the development of software, so that software can be used. So Aries VCX is a project. Akapai is Aries Cloud Agent Python, shortened Akapai is one of those projects. And so this call is specifically around sort of coordinating those efforts. Some of those efforts have their own development and user group meetings as well that are more very specifically focused on the code base itself. And so this is kind of the top level call for Aries. So this one probably, the agendas are posted online, and so you can see they're not often created very far in advance, but they are also recorded. So you could, if you're not attending, but you find a meeting that discussed some topic you're interested in, you'd be able to listen to those recordings. We don't have an active mailing list in this community. The calls. There's also channels. There's a variety of channels on the Hyperledger Discord server as well, that are frequented, but much more than the mailing list, for example. So there's that. So
Okay,
that's
thank
probably
you.
the best way to follow. But anyway, thanks everyone for coming. We're over. Thanks for coming, and I hope your week is a great one, everyone. And we will see you around.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you all.